Hi, this is Lauren, and I'm so excited to have my first video here on the Whimsy Stamps channel. I am going to be showing you how I made this slimline card featuring the brand new Yeti for Love and Slimline Hearts Background die. I'm going to be watercoloring the background of this card, so I have some watercolor paper just taped using some low tack tape to my glass mat. I'm getting out my supplies. I have my little bowl of water, a towel to wipe my brush. I also have this set of watercolors. It's a very inexpensive set, and I am putting down a wash of water on my paper, and I'm just going to pick up various colors of pink and purple. I'm not striving for any type of watercolor perfection here. We're going to be layering on that new Slimline Hearts background die, so we're just going for color and laying down color to shine through behind that die. So I'm just picking various purples and pinks, and I'm adding more water to my paper to create that wash, and that helps the watercolor kind of blend together through that water with the other colors on its own. So I'm going to finish off here with this purple, and I really like the smooth transition between my colors, and I'm going to get out my heat gun to help this dry. I want this to be dry because I'm going to add a splatter on top. So I'm bringing out some metallic watercolors, and I'm going to splatter some purple and some pink on top of this watercolored background. And the reason why I dried in between, like I said, is because I wanted splatter, and if the water was still wet, the color from my splatters would just blend into the background. So I'm wiping up my glass mat here, and I'm going to dry it again using my heat gun. I'm going to make sure I get the back side. I want my paper to stay relatively flat. And once that's done, I'm actually going to run it through my die cutting machine and use the pressure between these plates to help flatten that paper out. Here you can kind of see how that color is going to shine through in those open hearts. The die itself measures 8¼ by 3¼ and I'm going to trim my background to be just slightly smaller than that, like a 1/16 of an inch smaller than that. I want it to fit behind my die cut piece but not have to worry about lining up the background behind the die exactly. So this will give me just a bit of a wiggle room but yet still have nice stability on my card base behind that die. So I've ran my die with some white cardstock. I'm carefully peeling the border and the heart details off the die. I'm going to save all those hearts for a future project, so I didn't want them flying everywhere by pulling them off the die. I'm applying some strong sticky tape behind my watercolor paper. It is a little bit warped from watercoloring, so this will make sure that it will stay nice and flat on my card base. I'm going to line it up to my Kraft card base. I have cut it to 8½ by 7 inches and scored it at 3½. And now I'm going to glue on this beautiful background die cut. I've applied glue all around the edge and in various spots in between all the different hearts and glued that right onto my card base. I didn't really have to worry about that watercolor paper sticking out of the edges because I cut it to be slightly smaller than my die, and I absolutely love all that purple and pink coming through that white cardstock. So now we're going to move on to our Yeti. I have another piece of watercolor paper here, and I am stamping this cute Yeti with the hearts on a string in a black pigment ink, and I am going to emboss it with a fine detail in clear. I love using this type of embossing powder when I have images that have a lot of detail. It makes sure that I have a nice, crisp, clean image, and I'm going to use my heat gun to melt all that embossing powder. And once that is done, I am going to bring out some watercolor markers. I am going to apply color to the image and then use a water brush pen to move that color around. So I'm applying a little bit of color to my images where I want it to be the darkest, and then I'm going to use that water brush to move the color out into the rest of the image. I like to emboss my images when I use this coloring technique because it helps keep the water inside the lines. The embossed line is kind of a raised line, and because of the melted plastic of the embossing powder, and it just helps keep the water in the image. I don't have to worry about water bleeding into a spot I don't want it to. You know, occasionally I do get a little bit of bleed, and that's okay. I just saturate the area with water and pick it up with a cloth or with a paper towel, just something to pick up that water before it dries. Now that I'm done with my hearts, I'm going to use some light gray and color in the fur of my Yeti. I'm applying it to the edge and bringing that color in just like I did with the hearts. But because I have such a large open area on this Yeti, I'm also going to add in some color just in various spots in that big kind of beard, I guess, of our Yeti. And that's just to add more texture to his fur. And I'm going to go around and do all of his fur in this color. I decided to keep with the purple pink theme for my Yeti as well, so I am going to make the fur that is showing on his hands and feet and face kind of this purpley pink color. And I'm going to color his little toenails and horns in a darker purple color. I thought just kind of creating somewhat of a monochrome look of purple and pink would be really pretty for this card. If you already have purchased this stamp set, I would love to know in the comments which Yeti is your favorite in this set. I think they all three are cute, but I would love to know what your favorite is and what color Yeti that you will be coloring once you get your stamp set. If you haven't purchased the set yet, I will have a link to the stamp set and die down below along with the rest of my supplies that I used in the making of this card. And I really hope that you are inspired to make Valentine's Day or any type of occasion with these stamp sets. So now that my watercoloring is done, I have some watercolor pencils that I'm just bringing in to add a little bit more color to my hearts. For the pink hearts, I'm adding a little bit of purple color pencil, and for the purple hearts, a little bit of pink color pencil. And I have a white color pencil. I'm just adding some highlights. It looks a little subtle here on video, but I'm just adding some highlights to different parts. I think the best highlight you could see is when I color in his horns here. So now that he is all done, I'm going to fussy cut him off screen, and let's get to layering and putting together our final parts of the card. I have been collecting ribbon for years and I'm terrible about putting them on cards. So that is one of my kind of goals for the year, is to really use the things in my stash. So I found this really beautiful bold pink ribbon and some natural twine, and I am tying a bow. I don't want my bow to be terribly bulky because I'm going to layer my Yeti over the knot of the bow. So I twisted the bow around my fingers and then used the natural twine to make a double knot and tie my bow together. To keep the bow from moving around, I'm using 3 glue dots to make sure that is nice and secure. And then I'm going to pop up my Yeti onto my card base with his right foot, or left, but his right foot over the knot of the bow. I wish I would have doubled up here. I do realize after I stick him down, his foot over the bow does stick out a little bit higher than the rest of the image. So I think about trying to pull it up and putting more dimensionals, but I was like, he is cute enough. It's totally fine and it looks great. I have these purple and pink sequins, and I'm going to apply them in various spots using my wet glue and my jewel picker to maneuver those around. I thought it would be fun to put some of these light pink iridescent with a mix of purple and magenta sequins that really tie in all the colors here on the card. Now that I have all those sequins in place, I take a look at my card and I'm like, something is missing. And it dawned on me, a sentiment. I need a sentiment. So I am going to stamp Happy Valentine's Day on the same craft paper as my card base. I'm using my grid mat here to just make sure my sentiment is as straight as possible before picking it up with my clear block. And I'm using that same black pigment ink on this craft paper to stamp the sentiment. I'm going to use the same embossing powder I used, a transparent detail embossing powder, and use my heat gun to melt that powder. I'm going to put my powder away because I am infamous for spilling onto carpet. And I'm going to use a little paper trimmer to trim my sentiment down. I want it to kind of have the same look as my ribbon, so I cut it at an angle, and I am going to pop this up on the top of my card. So I'm using some smaller pop-ups here and apply that to the top left of my card. And now we can take a look at the final card. I really hope you enjoyed this process and I hope you learned something new. I'm excited to see what you make with this stamp set. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to follow Whimsy Stamps on Pinterest, Instagram, and join our Facebook group. All of the links are down below. Have a great day.